Yeah, done with my Oreo.
Okay, good.
Do we really know what happened?
The brother did.
The brother, that's what I thought too.
I mean, that seems like kind of obvious.
Hey, do you want to talk about death?
Yeah. I mean,
Murdery thingy.
What?
Do you recognize that?
No, what is that?
In Nintendo Mario 64, in the like beginning when you would be at like Peach's castle, and it was like the main menu. That's the song that would play.
Oh, okay.
Do 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 do.
Oh yeah, I do recognize that now.
Do 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 do.
Dun dun da da. Dun dun da 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 da. Da 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 da. Sanford and Son was filmed before a live studio audience.
What did
It's the theme to
Super
Sanford
Mario
and Son.
like to wear?
Huh?
What did Super Mario like
Me?
to wear?
Or Super Mario?
Super Mario. What did he like to wear?
Overalls?
Denim, denim, denim.
Oh, shut the fuck up.
That's a good one, isn't it?
Welcome to Wednesday. We were watching more Vines. We were watching Vines yesterday.
Now you understand where I get Mary Chrysler.
If you guys are not steeped in Vine culture, as I was not, before I started going out with the fine Chloe here, I did not know what that was, nor had I ever seen it. But if you go on YouTube and look up Spider-Man Welcome to Wednesday Vine, you will find what we refer to, and we decided is our mascot.
It's Wednesday, my dudes.
It's Wednesday, my dudes.
But
welcome to Wednesday. Welcome to Mystery Murdery.
Vine
thingy.
is no longer a thing, so there's all these like Vine compilations on YouTube.
And what's his name weirdly died. That's weird shit in the news. Speaking of weird, just looking for our weird shit in the news.
The co-owner of Vine.
The former co-owner of Vine.
The former co-owner of Vine.
Right.
And the guy who made HQ Trivia died of a drug overdose, right?
Oh, it was a drug overdose?
I'm pretty sure it was a drug overdose.
Well, I had only seen it like right when it happened, and they weren't like releasing the cause of death. So I have no idea what it was, but that would make sense. In terms of the circumstance, but anyway, so yeah,
I'm Chloe.
I'm Mario.
This is.
I said mystery.
Time now.
Mystery Murdery thingy,
where we do mysteries
and murderies
and thingies.
Cool. And yeah, mine this week. It's like.
I'm excited.
It's actually 3 mysteries.
What?
In one.
What?
Bum bum bum.
What?
I feel like I should go first, just because mine is going to be shorter.
Yeah, mine's going to be a long one.
Okay, cool.
Well, in my opinion, it's long for me. Some of mine are kind of short.
Long form. What was that website that you just showed me?
Okay, I recommend this to everybody.
Yeah.
Longform.org has just tons of long form articles.
It's really cool.
And there's like a true crime section.
If you're a fucking nerd like we are, if you're part of the nerdy team mystery over here, so go to longform.org and there's some good mysteries there. That was a really
great high five.
That was a pretty good one. I liked that. So, okay, so mine is the 3 big mysteries of the Japanese National Railway. So, okay, in late June, early July...
What does this mean?
Okay, 1949, the just established National Railway of Japan, the Japanese National Railway, was rocked by 3 big, tragic mysteries, all within, 3 weeks of each other. So, in all, 10 people would die.
What?
At the end of the series of mysteries that I'm going to detail.
10 people will die.
10 people are going to die. It's sad.
When did this happen again?
1949.
Okay.
So this is Japan just after World War
II, yeah.
Yes. So obviously, we all know our World War II history. Japan, part of the Axis, right? Allies defeat the Axis. Japan gets crushed, including with obviously 2 nuclear bombs from our own country. That's a different story. The moral implications, all of that. We're going to leave that aside. So at this point, that's all happened, right? Japan, it's in tatters. It's the economy is just laid bare, right?
Yeah.
And we're talking 1946, 1947 here, right? So a couple of years before when this happened. And the United States, right, and the Allied powers, they realize, right, in the midst of the Cold... We've been talking about the Cold War, like, every fucking week on this podcast, but,
Yep.
like, I know, it's oddly salient in these times as well. Since we're in a second Cold War, let's just say it, whatever, that, you know, but at this point, right, the Americans, the British, whomever, they were afraid Japan was going to go the way of Cuba. Again, they didn't want another Cuba, just like in fucking, you know, Indonesia. They didn't want another Cuba. So they thought, okay, we can't let Japan, like, slip toward communism. We have to make it super capitalist. We have to build it up. We have to make everybody rich and prosperous so that it won't turn toward communism. Right. So, you know, part of that was this kind of like reconstruction, revitalization plan. Right. And part of that plan was the construction of a national railway. So that's where we get to the Japanese National Railway. Now you see where I'm actually going somewhere. I'm not just like spouting off about history. It actually ties back into the fucking story that I'm telling this week. So while the railway itself was nominally run by a Japanese man, right, the first president, Sadanori Shimayama, the real control, the power behind Shimayama was exerted by the occupying force, by the Americans, and specifically in the person of an American banker named Joseph Dodge. And Joseph Dodge, he instituted this thing that came to be known as the Dodge Line, which was a regime of fiscal austerity measures that involved, you know, just like a lot of tightening the belt kind of things, right?
What is fiscal austerity?
Sure. Real, just super fucking quick. Fiscal austerity. Higher taxes, lower spending.
Okay.
Basically, that's what it is. And in terms of the National Railway, what that meant was tons and tons of layoffs. Eventually, almost 100,000 Japanese National Railway workers were laid off in a few rounds of layoffs. The first round of layoffs was on July 4th, 1949, ironically enough. Of course, doesn't mean bupkis to the Japanese, right? Well, I mean, I'm sure they were aware, but, you know, I'm not sure they would care that much. 30,000 or so people were laid off from the Japanese National Railway on that day. And while the decision to lay off all of the tens of thousands of Japanese was made by Joseph Dodge, the burden of actually carrying out the massive layoff and of telling the JNR employees was, of course, on the back of Shimayama, of Sadanori Shimayama. So here's where the mystery comes in. About 24 hours after announcing that round of layoffs, Shimayama is found dead on a lonely stretch of railroad tracks, his body having been apparently cleaven in two by a passing locomotive. Yes. So this is where we find ourselves, right? On the very late night, about 12:30 a.m., July 6th, you know, Sadanori Shimayama having been killed by this train. But let's back up just a little bit. Let me just say, by way of introduction to the actual mysteries, that this is the first of the three mysteries, of course, and is known as the Shimayama Incident. And here's kind of what we know about what happened to Sadanori Shimayama on July 5th, what kind of came out of the investigation. So July 5th, 1949, obviously this is the day after the huge layoffs. Shimayama talks to his, people over at JNR, tells them, hey, you know, I'm going to be in, there's a big meeting at 9 o'clock about everything that was going on, right? It's a big day.
Okay.
And Shimayama was picked up by his driver at about 8:20 a.m., as he normally would have been, you know, from his home there in Tokyo, the capital of Japan. So he tells his driver, though, to stop at this department store called Mitsukoshi on his way to work. The store was not open yet. So they go to the bank, they sort of drive around for a while.
Is this like
go back to
normal?
Mitsukoshi. This is very, very abnormal. By this time, it's 9:37 a.m.
And he's late for the meeting.
Yes. And we know that it's 9:37 a.m. very specifically because he's caught, of course, on, video seen by people.
Okay.
I don't know if they would have necessarily had video at that time, and that obviously they wouldn't have. I don't know why I said that. I'm not going to edit this, so it's going to stay in there. Whatever.
How do we know them? By accounts of what people said?
Huh? Yes. He was seen by many people.
Okay.
Inside of the store and afterwards. Who he was not seen by, however, was his driver. He never came out again. His driver never saw him alive.
Wait, what? Wait.
So
when did he... What? I'm so confused. Okay, go back.
9:37 a.m., July 5th. He tells his driver to go to this store, right? This, department store.
Oh, he's not with his driver.
He was, and then he goes into the store, not with his driver. He leaves the driver outside.
Okay.
Driver's in the car.
Okay.
Driver's chilling.
All right.
Listening to some tunes.
Cool.
Some nice American radio, I would imagine. They were probably playing a lot of like Elvis.
A lot of propaganda over there.
They were probably playing a lot of propaganda too, sure. But yeah, he goes into the store. His driver's in the car. He's like, "Hey, I'll be back in about 5 minutes," and he just never comes out again. And no one knows what happened really in the interim between that and 12:30 a.m. July 6th, right? Some, 12 plus hours later, 15 hours later, he's found on the railroad tracks dead. Like I said, cleaving in two. Not to make light of it, obviously.
God, that's crazy. I thought you meant the driver drove around for a while or something.
He did until they went back to the store because it was closed. So they were kind of wasting time until it opened again.
Oh, okay.
Although, why he wasn't at the meeting, like you were saying earlier, and why he didn't just go to work, I mean, obviously, he was, avoiding what was coming, right? Yeah. I mean, that seems, obviously, we don't know. I'm saying obviously a bunch of times. But that seems clear, that he was, avoiding work, because it's super uncomfortable.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be there.
Yeah.
He was kind of worried, I gotta fire all these people.
But there are all these people who are at the meeting that he's supposed to be at.
Waiting.
That now not only are they dealing with this horrible situation with 30,000 people having just been laid off, but they're like, where's Satonori, And they contact the police. The police immediately start investigating. And
Don't
just...
you mean Shamayama?
Well, Satonori is his first name.
Oh. Wait, did I say that right?
Yes, Shimayama.
Shimayama.
I mean, as close as you're going to get, I guess. Or I'm going to get. So, yes, about 12:30 a.m., his dismembered body found on the Joban line of the tracks, the JNR tracks. So while police were able to find several witnesses, like I said, who saw Shimayama throughout the day, they were never able to really say definitively what happened to him, or really have any great idea of what happened. Basically, the trail runs cold at this point.
Until they find him. Oh, no, sorry.
I'm just saying after the body was found.
Okay.
Right. They don't really know. Even to the point of, was this murder or was it suicide? That becomes the big question. And there are different ideas.
But you said he was, in two?
Well, he had been hit by the train.
Oh, okay. I was picturing that he was, laying down on the tracks and it, ran over him.
Maybe. Or maybe his dead body was thrown onto the tracks.
Oh.
Or maybe he ran onto the tracks. I mean, who knows, right? But either is a plausible, outcome. And the two reports that came out in terms of the autopsies that happened pointed in different directions. So there was a medical examiner named Shinosuke Yasushima who created a report kind of initially from a sort of initial autopsy that seemed to suggest suicide. However, the official report that ended up coming out stated that Shimayama had died before being struck by the train.
So which one is true? Do we know?
I mean, who's really to say? But it seems like the second one was more definitive, perhaps. The first one maybe was too cursory. I'm not totally sure. But that's the mystery, right? This is essentially where this mystery sort of resides in this whole question of what exactly happened in that time, right before his death. And many hypotheses, obviously, came about throughout the years. Some of these suggest foul play, of course.
Yeah.
The main theories in that direction center around disgruntled fired workers, of course. That seems like, well, just laid off 30,000 people. There's 30,000 people and more, their families, who have a motive now, right?
Yeah.
And supposed, quote, leftist radicals out for revenge, or, less plausibly, quote, American agent provocateurs wanting to discredit the communist movement.
Okay.
So again, was it a false flag? We've talked about false flag operations before. Was it a false flag operation? Some people think maybe it was a false flag operation by the Japanese government itself, but other people think it was maybe done by the Japanese Communist Party. So it's, again, not known at all.
So that's pretty high-profile murder right there.
Oh, yeah. Hugely. He was a former minister of transportation in Japan. Yeah. And, like I said, the first president of the Japanese National Railway. So, yeah. And the statute of limitations, which apparently there is a statute of limitations on murder in Japan, at least at that point, I guess, ran out in 1964. So I guess the police kind of stopped looking at that point, I'm assuming.
Was there any confession?
No, nothing's ever come out about it. And whatever, led to Shimeyama's death, according to this Tokyo Weekender article that I got a lot of my info from, this incident did have the effect of discrediting leftists in post-war Japan and also fomenting anti-U.S. sentiment. So, like I talked about, there were those kind of main theories, right? Was it the leftists, or was it some sort of false flag operation by the Americans? People definitely bought into that sort of, moving forward in time. Because these are still, like, pretty, as I'll get to at the end, these seem to be fairly salient still in Japan, which I'd be interested to know, actually, if like, I don't know, we don't get many listeners from Japan, but if you're listening to this in Japan, like, email us, mysterymurderythingy@gmail.com. Have you heard about this before? Let us know. So the second mystery, okay, is what's called the Mitaka derailment.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
This sounds deadly.
Very, very tragic. This is the highest death count of the three that I'm going to talk about. And this is an incident that happened just 2 weeks after Shimeyama's mangled corpse was discovered on the Tokyo rail lines. So you imagine that. That's in the news 2 weeks later. On the evening of July 15th, a large passenger train with no one in it ran into Mitaka Station. The, sort of levers had been placed down and sort of roped off or whatever.
Okay.
And whoever started it up had booked it off the train, and it was just hurtling towards a station where people were. So essentially this was a, runaway train going into the station. You can think of it sort of as a, a bonsai attack, right, but with the train.
Oh, my God.
That's essentially what this is. It killed 6 people.
Oh, my God.
And injured 20. And the pictures of this are disturbing. I mean, they don't have pictures of bodies or anything, but just of the train, like, afterwards, sitting there mangled, with the building all broken up. It's, it would have been, I mean, if you've ever seen footage, because this happened in the U.S. a couple of years ago, one of these incidents where a train runs into the station, it is devastating and horrifying. And this came the same week as the further firing of 63,000 people from the Japanese National Railway.
So it was after another round of fire?
Another round that was twice as big.
Oh, my God.
Right. So this clearly was an act of sabotage, obviously.
Because the ropes were tied down?
Yeah. I mean, this couldn't... It's not like a circumstance that would have happened any other way. Yeah. But somebody intentionally did this. Dastardly deed. I know. And presumably it would have been linked to the firings, although no one is really to say, right? So the police suspected right off members of the National Railway Workers Union, again, linking it to the firings. 9 members of that union and 1 non-member were arrested and charged with the deadly sabotage. Now, while that one non-member of the union, who was the conductor of the train, Keisuke Takuchi, confessed to doing this, it appears that was a case of forced confession.
Did he not know any details or what?
I'll kind of get into the evidence for that. But just as a kind of, if the concept of forced confession, right? This is a thing that happens. I feel like you always have to say this whenever this comes up. This is a thing that happens. This is a legitimate thing. Yes. If you think, oh, why would someone ever confess to something that they didn't do? Well, people do it all the time. It happens surprisingly often. And a lot of times it's because of the same reasons why Taguchi did. Because the Japanese police were, he was... It said in one of my sources, driven by prolonged and coercive interrogations by the prosecutors.
Oh, okay.
The police at this time were known to use coercive, to the point of maybe even torturous techniques to elicit confessions from the people they wanted to confess. Not the only time or place in which that's ever occurred. Another example would be modern-day America. The place in which we live and the time in which we live, where this happens all the time in the United States. So, but it happens in a lot of countries, throughout a lot of times, including right now. And apparently this was the case with Keisuke Takuchi. A third party, I guess this was a person who's, they didn't want to reveal his identity, but he gave an alibi to Keisuke Takuchi. Apparently he was at a JNR communal bath, kind of like a bathhouse, at the time that the incident occurred. And Takuchi's lawyer also came forward in 2010, sort of charging that, that the police had coerced him into the confession. In 1955, Takuchi was sentenced to death by hanging. The other 9 of the defendants were acquitted.
What?
Right. So clearly they didn't have that much evidence, right? The only thing that they were going on essentially was Takuchi's confession.
So, we know, but we don't know?
We know that we don't know too much. Just like with all 3 of these mysteries, kind of. There's a lot of questions. A lot of questions. There's not that much to go on. Not that much evidence. So... with that lack of evidence, the police wanting to obviously have someone, to be able to pin this on. Takuchi, it should be also said, recanted his confession fairly soon afterwards.
Yep.
Maintained his innocence throughout his life. Yep. He did not end up dying by hanging. He actually died of a brain tumor in prison in 1967. Oh. So about 12 years after his sentencing.
Wow.
So, yeah. And as of the writing of that Tokyo Weekender article, which I think was 2009 or something, his son was still trying to get a retrial posthumously for his father. So, yeah, they're still trying to sort it out, maybe, actually. Okay, third and final mystery. Okay, so this is the Matsukawa derailment. Okay?
Another one?
So this is a little bit different. So 3:09 a.m. on August 17th, 1949. Okay, so this is, about a month later, 3 weeks later.
Oh, wow.
These all happened within about a month of each other. Okay. So a passenger train derailed and overturned. The locomotive overturned, you understand. Yeah. The actual passenger cars themselves, however, were also derailed between Kaneyagawa and Matsukawa stations. And 3 crew members died, and 8 passengers were injured in this particular incident. So this is where we're getting up to the figure of 10 deaths, right? 3 here, 6 from the train running into the station, and obviously Satonori Shimiyama. Satonori Shimiyama, the first one, the president of JNR, who had just died. And, again, the police targeted JNR union activists.
Were they... Wait, why?
Just because that was the assumption. They were just like, if anyone did this, it was going to be the unionists, the leftists, they're connected probably to the JCP, the Japanese Communist Party. They must have done it. It must be them. So let's, round up the usual suspects. It's that kind of thing.
Okay.
And in terms of evidence, the investigators found that the, quote, the nuts and bolts on the track joints had been loosened and railroad spikes had been removed, close quote, causing the deadly derailment.
So it was on purpose?
Oh, yes. This is, again, an incident or a case of very obvious sabotage.
Was this also after a round of firings?
I mean, in a sense, I don't know that this one happened so close behind another one. Necessarily, I didn't read that. But obviously, that's the context in which this was occurring as well. So, in all, 10 Japanese National Railroad Union members and 10 Toshiba Union members were indicted by the police or by the prosecutors. And in order to extract confessions from them, obviously, the police, employed their usual tactics, like we were just talking about. And initially, all 20 were found guilty, and 5 of them were sentenced to death.
Oh, my God.
After a second round of trials, 4 of the death penalties stood. Many Japanese, including the novelist Kazuo Hirotsu, were not convinced. And this guy, Kazuo Hirotsu, starts a campaign to uncover what's really going on here, right? He, he knew that something did not add up in terms of what the police were saying was going on here. And he and others, sort of almost the way that, now you hear about people go on Twitter, right, and they'll say, like, hey, this and this, like, who is this person in this picture? And then they'll just, crowdsource it.
Yeah.
This was crowdsourcing, but in, like...
without the internet.
The late 40s, early 50s, right?
Yeah.
Just a good reminder that these sorts of, like, social projects have always existed. It's a natural human instinct, which is awesome, that the internet, if anything, just makes better. Unless, of course, it's something terrible and sinister, which also happens. Anyway.
Reddit.
Many things.
Many things.
Yes. So he, Hirotsu, and others exposed the iniquities and inadequacies, that's my clever phrasing that I wrote down, of the police investigation. You're welcome.
Iniquities?
Iniquities. So in other words...
Inequalities?
They found that the police were corrupt, that they were doing things like suppressing exculpatory evidence, which they're not supposed to do. Exculpatory being a word, of course, obviously, which means that it tends to show that you're innocent, like any non-lawyer would know. I'm not a lawyer, nor would I be, because I'm not smart enough. No, I don't know. Anyway, he and others did this thing, and they eventually, in 1961, got all of the 20 defendants acquitted.
Oh, wow. By
the Sendai High Court. 2 years later, it was finalized by the Supreme Court of Japan. So went up to the highest court in the land, and they said, there's no evidence here. Like, these people are not guilty, and acquitted all 20. Now, of course, they had been in prison, for 12 years at that point, but that's how these things often occur. And these incidents were, definitely a sign of the times, like we've talked about in terms of the post-war context, how Japan, there was this, strong anti-communist sentiment that was playing out, that all of these people were sort of caught up in, right? In a sense, the 20, people who were put on trial here or put in jail, unjustly are also victims in this story.
Yes.
And, that's because of a, sort of an unwillingness on the part of the police to just accept that they didn't know who it was.
They just wanted to get in there and blame somebody,
right,
and appease themselves and appease the public and have a peace of mind, I guess.
Which I can understand.
But yes,
but it's wrong.
Yes.
And it doesn't help us to find the criminals. Sorry. This is probably very obvious, but I just feel like it happens
all the time.
Again, yes, it's a thing that happens not only in 1940s Japan, but also like now in the United States and like a lot of other places throughout time. There are just these certain, I don't know, it must be just something fundamentally human, but certain fundamental issues that occur in the justice system that just seem to be endemic, right, to people.
Yeah.
You know, we have to know, right? There's this burning need within people to know the solution, the answer to the question. But a lot of times you just don't know. And we have to be better at that, you know?
We have to accept that. That's why we like mysteries.
Yes, exactly. That's why we're Team Mystery.
You get to speculate.
So, reckless speculation. So, 60 years after, and this is what I was mentioning before, these tragic incidents in 2009, about 1,200 people, according to the Japan Press Weekly, rallied against the government of Japan, who they broadly held responsible for the Matsukawa incident. And so that sort of, you know, tells you the resonance of these things, you know, still 6 decades later. And those marching included reportedly some of the former defendants themselves. 6 of them were living at that time. And, you know, their supporters, their family, their friends, etc. In the decades since these 3 big mysteries, you know, they've been the subject of endless debate, books, movies, even a couple of mangas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they just remain very, very mysterious. Like I said, it just...
Where did you find this?
I found this, I believe, on my favorite Wikipedia page, Unsolved Killings or Unsolved Deaths. I always forget which one. If you look up either one of those, you'll get to the same Wikipedia page.
Is there a lot?
There are quite a few, yes. And it's just fodder for great mysteries. So it's really good. Okay, so my sources are Matthew Hernon at Tokyo Weekender. Like I said, that's where I got a lot of my info from. Wikipedia.
Ayo.
Shimayama Incident, Matsukawa Derailment, and Mitaka Incident pages. And an article in Japan Press Weekly titled National Rally Marking Matsukawa Incident's 60th Anniversary from October 18th, 19th, 2009. So yeah, that's my mystery for the week.
Yay! Okay, it's my turn?
Yes. Excited to hear what you've got.
Everybody should be excited, because this is one hell of a story that I discovered, because me and my mom like to watch true crime stuff when I go home. My mom and I like to go to horror movies together.
Yes, Your mom and you like to watch true crime together. That's awesome.
And so she just DVRs like all of these things, and I get to pick and choose. And she's seen them all, but yeah.
Sure.
So I found one on Oxygen called The Method of a Serial Killer.
Okay.
I'm just going to start.
Cool. Go.
So let's first talk about the killing of Samantha Koenig. So this happened in Anchorage, Alaska, February 1st, 2012. So in Alaska, they had these like cute little drive-up coffee stands. They're pretty small, but they're popular.
Oh, I've never heard of that.
They're all over the place. So Samantha Koenig worked at one of these, and she worked the night shift. And at that time, she was the only person. She was closing. So she was the only barista in the shop. At closing time, it was closing time, only person there. So usually her boyfriend of about 9.5 months usually picks her up to take her home. But that night, when he goes to pick her up after work, he finds that she's not there. So he waits, he looks for her, but eventually he goes home to her father. He goes to her house, talks to her father, says, "Hey, have you heard from Samantha?" Soon he gets a text from her phone saying, quote, "I'm spending a couple days with friends. Let my dad know," end quote. So immediately he's like, what? Like, that doesn't make any sense. This is not her. He just knows immediately. It's out of the ordinary. It's not something she would do.
That's so creepy.
The next day, when she still doesn't turn up, the dad calls the police to report his only daughter missing. So what they do is the police contact the owner of the store, and they find video footage. So it's very scary. So it's of inside the little shop. And so basically, like, a car pulls up to the kiosk window at around 8 o'clock. And on the video, you see Sam making a drink for him. And then you can see her, when she goes back to the window, her body language totally changes. She looks tense and she's scared. She turns off the lights. And then an individual comes in, jumps through the window. And she goes along with him, like because she just thinks he's going to rob the place. But he, like, takes her and forces her away from the shop. And they disappear.
Oh, my God.
So James Koenig, the father, he sees this. He starts raising hell. So they put posters up all over the place. There's search parties. T-shirts are made. Pins. There's a vigil. People donated money. There's a reward. I think the reward was something like $4,000 or something like that. A few days later, the police find more video footage taken from a business across the street. So their cameras were out. And it's of the parking lot. And it shows her and an individual walking to a white pickup truck. I think it was a Chevy. I could be wrong. But it was from 1999 to 2007. And basically there's several thousand of these kinds of trucks throughout Alaska. So that doesn't really narrow it down for them. So what they end up doing is contacting the FBI. The FBI has more manpower. They have profilers, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So the case is handed over to Jolene Godin, who is a badass. She's badass, straight up badass. She becomes lead investigator.
Makes me want to watch that video of Miley Cyrus singing Jolene.
Jolene.
That's like what I think of immediately when you say that name.
But yeah, I just adore her. So she, comes in and immediately starts asking questions. She's like, is this someone that knows her or is this a stranger? That's the question here. Mm-hmm. So the case grows
people,
cold.
Of course, most often are assaulted, murdered, by someone they know, etc., by someone that they know. Yes.
Exactly. So
be wary of your friends.
Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer.
Yes.
So 2.5 weeks go by. Nothing. Wow. 2.5 weeks after the abduction, the boyfriend gets a text from her phone again. And it says, quote, Connor Park, signed under pic of Albert. Ain't she purty? End quote. So police go to Connors Lake Park, which is a few miles away. And they find there's like a bulletin board with like events and like a map of the trail and stuff like that. On the bulletin board, they find a Ziploc bag thumbtack to the board, and it has a picture of Samantha and it has a ransom note in it. So in the photo, she's bound and she's taped her mouth is taped. And so the police take the photo to the father for an ID, and he's like, yeah, that's my daughter. But he notes that her hair is in a braid, and she never wore her hair like that, which is weird. So the ransom demands $30,000 be placed in her bank account. So what they do is they deposit the ransom, and then they wait. So police worked out a deal with the bank where the police and the FBI would be notified immediately if her debit card was used, and then they would dispatch people out to that ATM. Sure. So sure enough, a few days later, there's an ATM withdrawal. And every time there's 3 total within Anchorage. Okay. Every time they dispatch people out there, they're too late. They're always a few minutes behind.
Sounds like a movie.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So March 7th, this is a little less than a month after the abduction now. So another ATM withdrawal happens, but this time all the way in Wilcox, Arizona, which is about 3,800 miles, northeast. Southeast, yes, thank you.
Pretty sure 3,800 miles northeast of Alaska is fucking
like Greenland.
Like the middle of the ocean or Greenland or something, yeah.
Southeast, Wilcox, Arizona, 3,800 miles away. So then there's another withdrawal in Lordsburg, New Mexico. Then on March 10th, 3 days later, there's another withdrawal from Humboldt, Texas. then Shepherd, Texas. So he's moving.
Sure.
Money was always withdrawn by someone with a hood and a mask. They never got any footage of his face. But they do determine that he's driving a white Ford Focus and it's traveling eastbound. So they put out an APB all over the place for this car. One day, Texas Highway Patrol...
Burger 99, can I put out an APB on,
white Ford Focus.
White Ford Focus, 1999, 2007, over.
Abby, this is a high-profile case, missing girl. I say missing girl from Anchorage, Alaska.
Amber Alert. We got one of those the other day.
We got an Amber Alert the other day.
It was sad.
That was weird.
That's always sad.
That's scary.
Yeah.
So, one day...
I'm, like, doing funny voices.
One day, Texas Highway Patrol sees the Ford Focus. He's like, oh, shit, a white Ford Focus.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he says, verbatim.
Nice.
So... He pulls it over, he, like, waits for it to make some kind of traffic infraction, and it does. So he pulls it over. The police officer is given an Alaska driver's license. So they're like, oh, shit, this is him. Everybody get ready, this is him. So they searched the car, and they found clothing that matched the description of the person using the ATMs, and they find a gun, they find Samantha's cell phone, and they find her debit card.
Oh, fuck.
Israel Keys... 34 is arrested. Now, if you've ever heard of Israel Keys...
I've never heard of Israel Keys.
Okay, so he has replaced Richard Ramirez as my favorite serial killer.
Sure.
And I tend to judge my favorite serial killer based on how much I hate them.
Right. The one you love to hate.
And I hate this man. Yeah. I hate this man so much. Oh, he's so fascinating, but I hate him. This is a very emotional episode for me, okay? Just watching this documentary just fucking gives me the chills, because the FBI videotaped audio, all of it, all of it. They have all of it, and this man is terrifying.
I've watched TV shows before where they talk to, like, cold-blooded killers who are just
What's it called on Netflix? I'm Not a Killer?
That one...
Is that what it's called? Oh, that was weird.
No, I Am a Killer.
I Am a Killer. The very first episode, even.
I was thinking of Locked Up, and there's a couple of other programs.
Yeah.
But those ones in which they're like, it's my duty on Earth to kill every human being. And like, oh, Jesus Christ.
This guy...
Oh, there are people like this.
This guy's scary because he's so casual.
Sure.
Nonchalant,
right?
And this is a game to him,
right?
And he's the leader. Oh god,
his moral center is non-existent.
Not there.
Yeah.
So he's a total stranger. Okay, the family has no idea, no fucking clue who this guy is.
Which is not what I was thinking.
Yeah. So they go back. They take him back to Alaska. They take him to his house. They ID his truck from the video surveillance. It's a match. So in the first meeting with him, he seems like a normal, clean-cut, ugly-ass, needs a fucking haircut white dude. He doesn't open up, and he doesn't say anything. A few hours later, prosecutors get a call, and from his lawyer, he's like, okay, he's gonna open up. He's gonna tell you what happened. Israel agrees to a full confession if he gets a cigar, an Americano, and a peanut butter Snickers bar. So this is when he starts to talk. The FBI has never released the full audio tapes because his descriptions are so shocking and so graphic. So you know it's the real deal. So he starts by talking about the shed in his driveway. That's where he put Samantha there. He tied her up, puts tape on her mouth. He gets drunk, he smokes cigars, and he turns up the music. So his girlfriend and his 10-year-old daughter in the house don't know what's going on.
Oh my god.
And
there was like a serial killer who had like a wife and kids the whole time.
A lot of them did.
But there was like one in particular, and he would like keep them alive like in his garage. I don't remember which one it was. Anyway, go on.
So
sorry.
It's very weird. It's scary. So he sexually assaults her all night, keeps her there all night. And his family had no fucking clue what was going on. They had no idea. So while she's in the shed, he returns to the coffee stand. He grabs her phone, her debit card. He withdraws money from an ATM. and then he returns to the shed. In the morning, he kills her by strangling her and stabbing her. Says to the police, quote, "You've got your monster," end quote.
Oh my God.
You see why I'm like, it makes my blood boil, this guy.
But obviously that's not the end of the story.
No. So throughout the confession, the FBI is really weirded out by his behavior and his demeanor and his emotions. He
Or
was
lack of emotions.
Or lack thereof. He was nonchalant. He was really casual. He never showed any remorse. All he cared about was his freaking Americanos, cigars, and his Snickers bar. He acted like he was the smartest guy in the room. And so they're like, you know, this guy has definitely done this before. So here's a little bit of a recording of what he tells investigators.
There is no one who knows me, or who has ever known me, who knows anything about me, really. They're going to tell you something that does not line up with anything I tell you because I'm two different people, basically. And the only person who knows about the kind of things I'm telling you is me.
So he's like, I'm two different people. And they ask him, okay, how long do you think you've been two different people? Long time. 14 years. That's what he tells them. So they're like, okay, maybe this guy's full of bullshit.
Or maybe he's a serial killer.
Or maybe he's a fucking serial killer. So they're like, hey, direct us to her body and we'll give you another Americano and a Snickers bar. The morning after the kidnapping, so he continues to talk. The morning after the kidnapping, he rolls her body up, goes on a vacation with his girlfriend and his daughter to New Orleans on a fucking cruise. And he comes back 2.5 weeks later. And at that point, because it's Alaska and it's cold, and she's outside in a shed, her body's almost frozen. He puts makeup on her to make her look more alive. And then he braids her hair because that's the way he braids his daughter's hair.
Oh my fucking God.
And then he takes a picture of her, and that's what he uses in the ransom note. So when they got the ransom note,
She was already dead.
She had been dead. That's
for
why the
weeks.
text came 2.5 weeks later, because he went on vacation.
Wow.
So he dismembers her body and dumps it in the deepest part of what's called Matanuska Lake. He went ice fishing to cover it up. He literally went ice fishing, but was also dropping a body into the deepest part of the lake.
Right.
The conversation between the investigator and Israel says, "Did you catch any fish?" And he says, "Yeah." I'm like, "What did you do with them?" And he goes, "I took them home and I ate them." Just as he's just casually throwing a body into the water.
Right.
So now we know that this guy is a real-life steaming pile of horse shit. The FBI sends out their deep water dive team, and they actually send in, I thought this was kind of cool. They sent in, an underwater robot to capture footage, and they confirmed that there was something down there. So they sent in, specialized, deep water, cold, this is, middle of winter, too. This is mid-February.
They must have been in, legit,
they
underwater
had,
suits.
underwater wetsuits and,
or dry suits.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
But these professional, dive teams, and they find her, and they confirmed that it was her.
That's crazy.
So the question here is, are there more victims?
Sure.
And he hints that there are more victims, but he's hesitant.
Not unlike Mr. Smalls or whatever, the supposed 90 serial killer.
Right. And they recently linked him to another one that he didn't even confess to, but his DNA showed up.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot more.
So,
as may be the case here, I suppose.
Yes. So he only has so many cards to play, all right? So they make a deal.
Only so many more Americanos and fucking Snickers you can get, yeah.
So he's like,
fucking
I want an execution date. I want this whole thing wrapped up and over with as soon as possible.
Which we've also seen before with killers, yeah.
So there's no death penalty in the state of Alaska, but federally,
sure,
there is a death penalty.
Right.
So,
but generally, murderers are tried on the
thinking.
state level.
Exactly. He doesn't really. He's a little naive in that case, and he's thinking this is where I want it to go. So they're like, okay, if you want that, you got to tell us more stuff. Otherwise, no one's going to take you seriously at all. So in addition to a speedy execution, he also wants anonymity. So this asshole talks about how he doesn't want his daughter to grow up and, like, type his name in the internet and see stuff that he's done. Like,
well, maybe you should have thought that before you killed somebody.
Exactly.
Dick.
So he wants to control all the details and this and that and the other thing. Wants to control what the media knows. He doesn't want them to know anything. And he, quote, "It would be really fun to have all this stuff come out, but I'm not trying to single-handedly give my mom a heart attack, so," end quote. This is a major bargaining chip that the investigators have, and they use it to their advantage, and they do quite a good job. So they agree. They're like, this is all anonymous. Okay, we will keep your name out of the media. They're like, deal. So then he starts to open up. Now, I don't want to give, like, him too much time in the spotlight because the story isn't about him. It's about his victims.
Right.
But if you want to really know more about him, I suggest you go ahead and watch the full documentary. It's on Oxygen, and it's called The Method of a Serial Killer.
Which I totally agree. Like, as we talk about these stories, obviously, the victims, they're people, like, they deserve to, like, as doesn't often happen, right, be the focus of the story. On the other hand, as we all often also talk about, if we want to stop these kind of things, right, criminologically, we have to understand the killer.
Exactly.
And therefore, we actually have to, in a sense, hyper-focus on that person to deeply understand what was their motivation, what was their point of view, in order to better, catch these people, stop these people.
And Israel Keyes is incredibly fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
He's definitely one of the most fascinating serial killers I've seen. And there's more, and you'll find out what makes him unique. But here's a quick rundown.
Okay.
So he was isolated, homeschooled, classic. He grew up in a non-Orthodox group in Eastern Washington called the Ark. And they are on the Southern Poverty Law Center's list of racist organizations. They have a them versus us mentality, right?
Sure.
And he grew up he was marinated as a child with these teachings.
Mm-hmm.
He had violent urges at a very young age, and he tells a story about how him and his friend were hanging out in the woods, and he, like, finds a cat, and he kills it. I'm not going to say how. But basically, he kills it, he laughs, he turns around, his friend's throwing up. And after that, he spent most of his time alone, after he realized, well, this isn't fun to you?
Sure.
So he was like, I'm done.
Right.
He started stealing weapons. He had a whole cache of guns. He got kicked out of the house when he announced that he was an atheist, so he was on his own. Our girl Jolene Godin convinces him to talk more about his victims. So he tells of his very first assault. The very first time he planned it out, like, made up a place, planned it out, and was like, I'm gonna kidnap somebody, I'm gonna rape them, and I'm going to kill them. This is the first time he had it all planned out. This is what he talks about. Happened in 1997 in Oregon. He kidnapped a girl who had lost her way on a hiking trail, like the wounded deer in the herd type of mentality, the easiest target.
Right. Which is also often a focus of serial killers.
Yes.
That's certainly the way that, somebody like Ted Bundy or...
Right.
would have thought, or, Son of Sam, just many of the serial killers.
So this girl was smart. She knew that he was going to kill her. And so she starts to get inside his head. She starts being nice to him. She starts telling him how handsome he was and how he doesn't have to do this and how she might have dated him and that he's a really good looking guy and that this, then the other thing. And she never fought him. She was peaceful with him. And he loses his nerve and he lets her go. After that, he beats himself up about it. He feels so much regret that he feels like he lost some kind of this great opportunity. And he vows to never let anyone go ever again. So after this story, the FBI knows that there has to be more bodies out there. And they still want more. But he's still hesitant. Like, he still wants his execution date. They convince him again that they still need more info in order for that to happen. So he's like, okay, I'll give you 2 bodies and a name. I'm going to need a map of Vermont, an Americano, a cigar, and a Snickers bar. So note that Vermont is 4,000 miles away.
This guy got
from
around.
Anchorage. this guy definitely got around, and that's why he didn't get caught.
It's like that
for so
Smalls
long.
guy.
Exactly. So let's talk about the killing of Bill and Lorraine Currier. So they were a quiet couple living in Essex, Vermont. Bill worked at the University of Vermont as a caretaker for animals, and Lorraine also worked at the university at the medical center. June 9th, 2011, they failed to show up for work. Coworkers contact the police. Bill and Lorraine aren't the type of people to just, buzz off, just go off, leave somewhere without telling anybody. They searched the house. Their window was smashed, their .38 caliber was missing, and their phone line was cut. Their car was found a few miles away. There were no viable suspects. No one had any info. The case grows cold until 8 months later, this asshole sitting 4 miles away in an interrogation room confesses. So Israel starts to explain what happened. He planned all of this out. He picks a house. He stakes it out. He chose it because of how they had their backyard set up, and it was very easy access. There was easy access in, easy access out. There were no kids, there were no dogs, and there were only two people, an older couple living there.
So it's definitely part of his MO is he's not a great opportunist.
Right.
But he plans it out very specifically.
Right. So this is when he starts talking about the kill kits. So Israel has caches of gear that he stashed away. Jolene notes that these things would sit for years, just waiting to be used. He had gloves, weapons, rope, money, duct tape, shovels, Drano, lye, stuff to use to capture, kill, and hide somebody. He had these places, he said he had up to 12 of them stashed all over the country. So this part they show during the interview, he starts laughing and jokes that everyone loves a buried treasure, right? Yeah, fuck you.
Right.
This way, it's smart. This way, when he travels, he has no evidence on him.
Right.
Doesn't have to carry any guns, no weapons, no rope, no anything. So he led the FBI to a kill kit near Essex, Vermont, that had sat dormant for about 2 years. And they talk about, the profilers in the documentary talk about how this is really weird for serial killers. This is atypical. He's patient and he can delay gratification.
Right.
So after planning out to kill this couple, he talks about how he cuts the phone line in case they had alarms. And he actually sits in their bushes and waits outside for 3 hours for it to get dark, and he just waits for the right time. So he thinks everybody's asleep. He takes a fan out of a window in the garage to gain access. He uses a crowbar that he found in the garage to break open the window. And he talks about how he was in the bed. Once he got in the house, he was in the bedroom within 5 or 6 seconds. And so this was a straight up blitz attack, surprise, while they were sleeping. So as he's talking about this, he does a lot of casual chuckles and laughs. And he says, yeah, they were shocked. People never expect this stuff to happen to them. No shit. So he's he loves this shit, all right?
Yeah, no wonder no one wanted to hang out with this dude when he was a fucking kid.
Exactly. So he immediately ties them up. He puts them in their own car. He drives them to an abandoned, rundown farmhouse that he had stoked out earlier. So this farmhouse, he takes Bill, the husband, downstairs, ties him up. While that happens, he thinks he's I must have taken too long with Bill, because Lorraine gets out of the car, gets out of her restraints, and tries to run, but he tackles her, and he ties her back up. Quote, she was feisty, fighting the whole time, end quote. And he's fucking enjoying this shit. So this ordeal lasts all night. He sexually assaults Lorraine before strangling her to death, and then he shoots Bill to death. So he tells the FBI that the bodies are in trash bags in the basement of their home, of the Currier home. But by this time, the home has been demolished, and they never find the bodies.
What?
Investigators...
They didn't search the house?
That's what I'm saying. The investigators search... They go to the landfill.
Uh-huh.
They search the landfill, which is 13,000 cubic yards, which is 10 tons of trash. They search it for 12 weeks. They find nothing. No avail. So, to this day, the bodies have never been found. However,
Maybe
they
he was
know
lying.
he wasn't lying, because they went to, like, there's, like, a picture of, like, what was left. And there was, like, you could see, like, where the basement was because it was, like, underground or whatever. Sure. And they had cadaver dogs sniffing, and they found a scent, but they never actually... So there was something there long enough for that scent to be there, but they never actually found anything. Okay. Which is very weird. So the victims' families, they're interviewed during this, and they talk about how to this day, when they see, like, a bag or a shoe or something on the side of the road or in a ditch, they're like... They think and they, like, always wonder, is that Bill or is that Lorraine? And the stepsister talks about how it's like a feeling that never goes away. Right. So this shit's fucked up.
Yeah, I've heard that about many victims, or victims' families, that 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years later, the pain of it is still raw. A smell, a sight, can immediately bring you back to that point in time and that emotion. It's, I think, a testament to the bonds that we forge as humans, right? That we're such a social species that if a bond like that is, desecrated, it never goes away. Yeah. Literally never goes away.
Yeah. So, again, the FBI... They're pretty sure there's more victims. Sure. So Israel starts to talk more. He talks about how he would, like, get rental cars and drive just thousands of miles across the country. His victims were random. He leaves no clues, no evidence. His radius was basically scattered all over the country. So he wants the death penalty, right? And as we know, that the death penalty is not a quick process. No. But he doesn't really know that. He's naive of that. So he starts to talk about his first kill. He talks about he indicates that his first kill was in mid-2001 and that he moved to Naya Bay, Washington to start a family with his girlfriend. A few months after his first murder, he says he killed 2 more people. So throughout this whole interview process, he gives us these things in, like, bits and pieces, and it's not chronological, and it's vague. So he says he killed 2 more people. Most likely, the FBI deduced that it was most likely a couple, and that he kills the man first and then the woman second. During this time, he also becomes a father to a baby girl, but he's also still out there killing people. He was capable of living a normal, responsible life. He was a carpenter. He tells investigators that he never targeted children once after he had a kid. He had a tight timeline. He was never in a situation where he had to explain where he was for days on end. He was either seeing old friends or visiting family or something, or working on a job. So he drops hints. Like I said, he drops hints of 2 more victims. This would be his 4th and 5th victims. But like I said, he never goes through anything really chronologically. He talks about Lake Crescent in Washington, and he casually mentions how it's 500 to 700 feet deep and how no one has ever gotten to the bottom of it. And he says there's a body in there, but he's vague about the details. So the FBI is still bargaining, right? They're confident they can get more out of him, but then the trust is broken. There is a leak to the Vermont press, and soon his name and his details are out there in the public. They're like, he knows he killed Samantha Koenig.
So the police didn't tell them? Oh.
No, this was a leak. Oh. So now the media knows that he killed Samantha Koenig in Alaska and that he killed Bill and Lorraine Courier in Vermont. So even though he's in jail, he still has access to local TV and stuff. But before he finds out on his own, the FBI had to go in and, like, tell him, like, do some damage control.
Mitigation.
So at this point, they're back at square one. They lost all their bargaining chips. So at this point, the investigators are done being nice. All right. This whole time they've been playing along. This interrogation goes on for months. And at this point, and he doesn't actually talk about Lorraine and Bill Courier until April, which is 2 months after he killed Samantha, and was taken into custody. So they've had it. At one point, they start pushing him. They ask how many there are. And he says less than a dozen. As time goes on.
Should be fewer than a dozen.
I think he says less than a dozen.
He needs to also learn his grammar.
Most people don't.
He's murdering the English language.
Most people don't
along with
follow
fewer than
those
people.
types of rules.
Well, most people are serial killers, so...
Most people are... Are you a serial killer?
Of the English language.
Nice save. Nice save.
I had it all along. Okay, go.
So as time goes on, he stops smoking cigars. He becomes quieter. He shuts down because now he can't... His anonymity is gone, and that was one of the biggest things for him. He talks more about the death penalty and how he wants an execution date. So by this time, they're 6 months in. Investigators have determined that he has killed about 8 victims, 5 possibly being in Washington State. After killing 5 people, his girlfriend begins struggling with alcohol, and he leaves her, and then he marries someone else, and that's when he moves to Anchorage, Alaska. So this is when he started living a more normal life as a handyman and as a carpenter. Mm-hmm. He talks about traveling to the East Coast in 2009, and he casually talks about how he may have killed someone over there. They got a hold of his computer, and they found the name Deborah Feldman. So the FBI suspects that Deborah went missing on April 9th in New Jersey. And then 2 days later, a bank was robbed. Israel also admits to robbing that bank and that he was into bank robberies. Quote, I did get quite a bit of money from robbing banks, end quote.
Casually into bank robbing.
It's seriously sick.
Not a big deal.
He said it was similar to the rush you would get in kidnapping, but it was not at the same scale. So Deborah Feldman is described as having a high-risk lifestyle, and she was estranged from her family. She had addiction issues. She was probably on the streets for a while. People just thought she ran away. Her body has never been discovered. Mm. So when they showed him the photo of Deborah, his demeanor totally changed. They showed him a number of missing people, but when they showed him her, his demeanor changed, and he said he didn't know her, and he didn't know where she was, and he doesn't want to talk about her. I don't want to talk about her. They're like, well, we found her name on your computer, and he's like, there's lots of names on that computer. I don't want to talk about what's on the computer, and he really never does. He never opens up about it. 2009, 2011 is when the FBI determines that he probably started committing crimes more often, so he's unable to travel as much anymore, and his behavior and his MO kind of starts to change. Okay. He used to kill people who, quote, wouldn't be missed, but he starts to kind of veer from that. By the time he gets to Samantha, his behavior is totally erratic, and he's obvious, like he's using her debit card.
Right.
That's a mistake he never would have made before. During this time, he also talks about how he went to his sister's wedding and caused a scene. So his behavior overall was changing. He became more erratic. It was harder for him to not kill.
Right.
He talks about how usually after killed people, he was like, okay, and he could go on. But this time with Samantha, it was different. He did one kill and he was amped up. He was like ready to go. Quote, if you want, I can give you arson in Texas. I burned a house down. It was a mess. It was like a hoarder house, end quote. Investigators note that there's a lot of miles on his car and no one knows where he was. And they believe that there's another victim in Texas, but he never is specific. He's vague, he never talks about it. So by the fall of 2012, the FBI has interviewed Keyes about 25 times in the span of 8 months. So like I said, once his security is breached, like his name leaks to the press, he's more withdrawn. Mm-hmm. The FBI gets more desperate. He agrees to reveal where his kill kits are. Investigators use drones to recover some of them. After he agrees to this, a few days later, the lead investigator, Jolene Godin, gets a call that Israel Keyes has committed suicide.
I could see that coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't. When I was watching the documentary, really? I was like, what? Like, my mind was blown.
When are you going to kill me? When am I going to die? Hey, I want to die. When is it going to happen? I'm tired of this. Like,
deal was over, and he was like, right. Fuck this.
Yeah.
So he slit his wrist using a disposable razor that was, like, embedded into a pencil, so he, like, made it and killed himself. The correction officers never say where he got the razor. He leaves a suicide note, and in the documentary they read it, but it's, like, grossly poetic, and he doesn't really say anything that's worthwhile.
Wouldn't imagine he would employ too much, self-awareness in his last moments. Probably
This guy is a fucking coward. So Israel's secrets died.
People like
with
this
him.
are the true cowards of the world.
his secrets died with him. The only body they ever found was of Samantha Koenig, and that was because he led them straight to her. They never found the bodies of Bill and Lorraine Currier. They don't know for sure if he killed Deborah Feldman, but he was in the right place at the right time, but there's no body again, and there's no direct evidence. The FBI can comfortably say that he has probably 11 victims, but they know very little, and they really don't have much to go on.
It's amazing how much they've found out to have so little to show for it, right? You have
It's crazy.
a person who's obviously a serial killer. I mean, he's dead to rights, no pun intended, on one count of murder at least.
But here's the thing though, he only like gives them the information that he wants. And the rest is spread out all over the country. He's been everywhere. Who fucking knows where this guy has been?
And that's the thing, you know, it's just so difficult to solve random murders.
Yes.
And you know, most people are killed, like we said at the beginning of your story, by someone that they know. Usually very well, and a lot of times intimately.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it's just a total random kill, it's pretty tough.
So that is the story of Samantha Koenig, how her death was solved, and how the 8-month cold case of Bill and Lorraine Currier was solved. So I basically got everything from, again, a documentary on Oxygen called The Method of a Serial Killer. It's like on YouTube. It's just on YouTube. I highly suggest it. It's really good.
Sure. That's where that clip was from before that we played.
Yes, that's where that's from.
Right.
So that's the story of,
Crazy shit.
Do you see why I like, he's so incredibly fascinating, but I fucking hate him. He's just so, it's like his like casualness and his cockiness, and he's like, I'm the king of the world in this little room, and like, oh my god, it makes me want to puke.
It's like he thinks that killing people is cool. Like it makes him cool.
Oh my god.
Or something, like he's the fucking Fonz because he's a murderer.
Oh, it's
like,
terrible.
No, you're just a terrible douche who likes hurting people.
And I'm gonna be honest,
there's nothing cool about that.
I was really surprised when he ended up killing himself.
Really? You thought he was too egotistical?
I thought he was. Yeah, I thought he would go. He would see till the end. I thought he loved it. And I got the impression that he loved bragging.
But in a way,
this, that, and the other thing.
Isn't that the final manipulation? He got to set the terms of his own demise. That's what he always wanted. And it is not a, you know, it's sort of an atypical pathology, right? Or whatever you want to say. It's not totally common, but I do seem to recall other killers, you know, for whom this was the case, right?
Yeah.
Like one of the ones on I Am a Killer, who just like, you know, I want to die. And I decided I want to die, so that's how it's going to be.
And he also was talking about how, anyway, like, death row has better facilities and better benefits than, like, the regular corrections facility does. And I was, like, shocked to hear that.
These kind of people are also, like, super manipulative, but also have, like, weird logic that they follow, you know? Like,
it's so
they're manipulating everything, but it's not necessarily toward the end that you would think. Because, like, yeah, obviously they're, like, you know... obviously also people with mental health issues tend to be the victims of crimes, not the perpetrators of crimes, right? We should always say that.
Yes.
Always keep that in mind. However, clearly these people have issues, mental issues, chemically imbalanced issues, emotional issues, what have you.
This guy's nuts.
And yeah, it seems that this guy had them in spades.
As I'm watching this documentary, and then at the end I'm like, oh my god, it's a mystery. I'm going to talk about it. Because that was such a good fucking story. And like, oh my god.
Because who knows how many there may be out there.
Exactly.
You know, first, yeah.
And even for the ones that they're...
Right, even the ones that are seemingly pretty, you know, solid.
That they don't have bodies, they don't have anything.
You know, that couple, like you were saying, their family doesn't even know. Maybe they were never murdered. Who knows?
Yeah, it's crazy.
But I mean, they probably were, but, you know. Anyway, thanks for listening to the pod.
Yes, but I think it's time for weird shit in the news.
Weird shit in the news.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
I think I'm ready. I should say while we're getting ours up, we're doing a special episode. I'm not going to say what it is, but we're doing a very special episode.
Yeah, so let's talk about this.
Next week.
Next week is...
We're not going to reveal what it is, though. It's going to be a mystery.
Well, yeah, but we're going to talk about how it's our 1 year.
Yes, that is not a mystery.
It's our 52nd episode.
Exactly.
So it's 1 year since me and Mario were like, hey, like, it's Christmas. Your aunt is here. She has a great story to tell.
Right.
Let's actually do the podcast that we've been talking about for the past year.
Exactly.
Let's just talk.
It was 2 years ago that we, like, started talking about this.
I was like, we were just like, let's just do it. And it's been a year, and we're chugging along. We're doing okay. We're having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We love our listeners. We love you guys. And we love that you're here for us. And
Chloe, you were talking earlier about, kind of the... Instagram community of, like, podcasts, we're, like, tapping into. And, I think we definitely want to, that was part of what we wanted to, right? Become part of the conversation, become part of the community. We watched and listened to what other people did,
Yes.
Henry and Ben and
Karen and Georgia.
And, all the great podcasters out there, so... Anyway.
Weird shit.
In the news. So mine is from Reuters. You'll probably saw this. I haven't seen any footage, but I imagine there's probably some pretty great footage of this. So this is kind of a follow-up story, okay? So no free money in New Jersey. Police want spilled banknotes back. No free money in New Jersey. So if you hadn't heard, the police in New Jersey were urgently called out to the Pikeway or whatever when an armored Brinks truck was spewing cash like it's a fucking movie from the 80s or something out onto the road. And people apparently, as they of course would do, abandoned their cars in the middle of the fucking highway and ran after the cash, causing a tremendously chaotic scene, and not any serious injuries that it mentions. I guess everybody was fine, but it seems pretty dangerous. And they said if you took any money, no judgment.
Right.
It's fine, no questions asked.
They want it back.
Bring back the money, please. They do say, quote, "We have had several individuals contact ERPD," that's the East Rutherford Police Department, "and return money," they said in a tweet. And they also said, "We would like to advise people, if they have any money connected to this incident, to contact ERPD at 201-438-0165 to make arrangements for its return with no charges filed." Totally fine. So if you happen to have been, one of those lucky people, that won the highway lottery, so to speak, you also don't want to go to jail. So probably bring the money back. That would be my suggestion. So,
well, how do they know it's you?
You got to think that there's, probably footage of a lot of this. What happens nowadays in fucking public or private that's not on fucking video?
Yeah, you're probably right. And I bet there are people...
We're being recorded right now on audio.
What?
I know, right?
I bet people were like, "Hey guys, I was on highway, blah, blah, whatever,
Right.
and there was and look how much money I got. It was just everywhere, man."
You say that, but, many people have been
No, I'm
caught
not even kidding. That's probably
by
like what it was.
posting videos of their crimes on fucking social media. It happens all the fucking time. World's dumbest fucking cyber criminals. Okay, go.
All right, so, this is from USA Today, the busiest fucking website I've ever seen. Can you fucking see this shit?
USA Today, you have a terrible website. I just want you to know you need to make it a little bit better, a little bit cleaner, a little bit nicer. It fucking sucks. I'm looking at it right now.
Okay, so the title of the article is UPS Store Offers to Shred Children's Letters to Santa Claus in Viral Tweet. So, in viral tweet. So this was published by William Cummings in USA Today. So basically, the UPS store put out a tweet that said, quote, "If your child addresses a letter to the North Pole, you can leave it with us. We do shredding." That's So people were like, oh, come on, guys. Come on. Where's your holiday cheer? And they also
Are they like
noted-
doing cross promotion for the Grinch or something? Like, what's going on here?
It's just bad.
Yeah.
Bad advertising.
Bad social media presence.
Bad social media
That social media
presence.
manager needs a little talking to.
But it was obviously taken down. But
Sure.
they also noted how, like, it says most of the posts on the company's account show retweets in the single digits. The post offering to shred children's letters to Santa sparked nearly 5,000 retweets. So their numbers definitely went up.
Well, any
publicity is good publicity.
I guess they're employing that strategy.
But that's my weird shit in the news.
It worked for Judas Iscariot, right?
Judah.
Yeah. So I hope y'all are having a good winter time.
Simply.
I was going to do a correction. I forgot. Eid al-Fitr is a Islamic holiday. However, it is in like July or something. So that is not around this time. So
Oh yeah, we were talking about
that was like a couple
other
episodes ago. We were like,
and I
happy
said,
this and happy that. I was like, yeah.
I said Sam Hain, and Sam Hain is not how that's pronounced. Number one. Number two, it's not around Christmas time. It's in like October, and I think it's pronounced Samhain.
Samhain.
Samhain,
I think.
something like that.
Yes.
So I apologize.
But next year.
Not cool.
That's cool. It's fine. It's totally.
So
whatever.
yeah, tune in next week for our 1 year special episode. Right. Follow us on Twitter, please.
Right.
Please follow us on Twitter.
All we ask for Christmas is $1 on Patreon. Patreon.com/.
Hit us up on Patreon. It's a sad page, but you can help us lighten it up a little bit.
Sorry,
follow us on
I'll
Instagram.
try to add more stuff on there.
Follow us on Instagram and
we have been
hit
doing
us up
a lot on Instagram though.
Yes,
Thank
hit
you.
us up on Facebook too.
Chloe's our social media manager.
All the social medias. I'm trying, y'all.
Cool.
But thanks for listening. Tell your friends.
Thanks for listening.